What have been some of the key learning and moments and decision points for you in your career that make the biggest impact on you as a leader? And our young leaders here around the room is obviously very interested to hear from senior leaders like you as to the lessons they could learn as they embark on their career.
Well, I think one of the key things you learn from is crisis. If you make a plan and things go according to plan, you execute the plan, and at the end of the year, you have a variance of maybe 5%, 10%, or whatever it is. You made a good plan, everything went well. I mean, you learn something, but you don't learn a lot. The thing which you learn most from is a crisis. When what you planned for didn't materialize. Sometimes it's your fault because you didn't anticipate the problem. Sometimes it's an act of God or an eventuality which nobody could have imagined. These are the times when you have to react and act quickly. And you learn a lot about the people whom you're working with. And you learn a lot about the kind of organization that you have, whether it can respond or not. One good example was SARS. This was in 2003. This was severe acute respiratory syndrome. And the Prime Minister then had a very interesting way of describing it. He said, for once, every Singaporean was afraid of the same thing at the same time. And that galvanized people into action. And we were able to respond very quickly. We instituted a home quarantine system because it was a very, it was a disease with a very high fatality rate if you caught it. And the transmission mechanism was not fully understood at that time. So we instituted a home quarantine system, and those who had it or had been in close contact with others who had SARS were served with a quarantine order and you had to stay at home. And how did we enforce it? Technology helped. So what we did was we set up a, video camera. You had a computer video system. Every now and again, they'll call you up and say, can you please say hello to me on your computer screen? And we would say hello to them. And this was a way of checking whether they were abiding by their home quarantine. And by and large, the majority of people knew that they ought to for the sake of their neighbors and the community. So that's one innovation. What else did we decide to do? We thought that if people needed to have something which they could do to help ensure their own safety and good health. And we found that having a fever was a good indicator because we found that the transmission mechanism for SARS was such that you did not really become infectious until after you had a fever, a couple of days after you had demonstrated a fairly high fever. So we gave everybody in Singapore a thermometer. So it helps when your population is not so big. You can go out and buy up all the thermometers in the world and there are enough thermometers to go around. If you had 1 billion people, I don't think you can buy 1 billion thermometers, but if you have 5 million people, you can buy 5 million thermometers. So we gave every school kid a thermometer, every household a thermometer, so that at least, you feel something I can do to protect myself. When I take my temperature, I'm okay, I can protect my neighbors, and people feel a little more, they feel a little less edgy. And technology helped. We had people in the defense ministry who understood infrared technology. And so we developed an infrared fever scanner. Because it's very intrusive if you have a meeting like this and you go around taking everybody's temperature before they come into the room. But if you put up an infrared camera and calibrate it properly as he walks past, you can pretty much tell whether he's got a fever or not. And that helped to enable sort of social life to continue and meetings and so on to continue. So you learn a lot in a crisis. You learn a lot less when you're operating in, how shall I say, peacetime. So I'm not suggesting that you should create crises just to learn, but when there is an opportunity, try and be in the thick of it.